It was a lot of hard work and a lot of sacrifice over the years, but I've truly been blessed, and we continue to be entrepreneurs, and that really is the only way is going to ever be for me, and I think that's the way it should be for everyone out there, because you're never going to be as prosperous as you think you can be working for somebody else. I've just never seen it. When you set a goal, you really have to work toward that goal every day, regardless of the resources. I had zero resources. I remember making $2.35 an hour at the hardware store.
My goodness.
Now that was years ago, I get it, but it still was a very low wage even back then. But it didn't hold me back. All you have to do is continue to work hard. Don't take no for an answer. Keep moving forward. As Robert said, find good partners, lean on some of your friends and family, and get some confidence in what you're doing, and you'd be surprised what you can accomplish.
Hey, Flip Flop Flipper family, I've got my man, my business partner, Dave McCallie. He's back by popular demand. We unchained him from the desk. We allowed him out to come sit behind the camera here today and talk to you guys. We're going to talk about our partnership and how you guys should be forming partnerships as well. David, thank you for coming in.
Hey, it's a pleasure to be here. Thank you for having me.
So, what do we want to talk about first? Dave is an entrepreneur, a serial entrepreneur, actually. So you started out in business as a kid, right?
I started out as business when I was 19 years old.
Yeah.
I ended up getting into partnerships in a health club, and that's how I started becoming my own boss.
And then you also, at the time, were kind of double-fisting it. You were working for the man working at a hardware store as well, right?
Yeah, I started working in a hardware store when I was 14 years old.
Okay.
And I became the manager at 19. And I did like being in business, or at least when I saw how the business was run, that was encouraging to me. And because I had grown up relatively poor, I felt that the way to be successful was to be in business for yourself.
I think that's a great way to not be poor, is to be in business for yourself. That's what we talk about on this channel. Basically every video, we're talking about getting out of the rat race. You say you grew up relatively poor, and oftentimes when people see this, they will put in the comments, hey, it's great that you're a real estate investor or you're a business owner, but I don't have any money and I can't do it, or I'm from a broken home. I mean, there's all kinds of excuses, but you actually have a better story than most of them. If you want to share it, I'd love to have you share it, but you really were on your own at a very young age, and you weren't a little poor either.
Yeah, unfortunately, I lost my parents when I was 14.
Yeah.
One of them to alcoholism and the other one to a vehicle accident because of alcohol.
Mm.
And we didn't really have any family to support us, so we had to raise ourselves.
Yeah, and Dave's modest because when he says raise himself, you were the middle child. You had an older sister, an older brother, and a younger brother, but Dave was the head of the house from 14, I guess.
Well, back then it didn't seem that way, but at the time we were just doing what we had to survive.
Yeah.
And it was kill or be killed, eat or be eaten. That's how it was back then.
Yeah.
So I always had aspirations of wanting to be an entrepreneur or own my own business. And I had dreams of it. Wasn't sure if I could ever attain those goals.
Yeah.
But I did set goals early on, and it was surprising that I was able to hit some of those goals. Back when we were teenagers, saying what we had to say, do what we had to do, I said, I want to have my first Corvette when I'm 25 years old. I actually bought my first one when I was 24 years old. And I said, I want to be a millionaire at 30 years old. I actually hit to be a millionaire when I was 30 years old.
Yeah.
It was a lot of hard work and a lot of sacrifice over the years, but I've truly been blessed, and we continue to be entrepreneurs, and that really is the only way is going to ever be for me. And I think that's the way it should be for everyone out there, because you're never going to be as prosperous as you think you can be working for somebody else. I've just never seen it.
Yeah. I mean, so what? There are the unicorn jobs, right? There are the doctors and the lawyers of the world that do really well. Some people in sales do really well. But if you are working at a hardware store and you're not the owner of the hardware store, it's very unlikely that you are going to be doing extraordinarily well, right? Like that's...
Yeah, and that was the thing. I when I saw my boss, observing how he ran the business, I actually learned more what not to do as a business owner than what to do as a business owner. And I think that taught me early on how to run a business successfully, because I took care of a lot of the business. And, losing your family members and your support system early on in life does give you a perspective on life that teaches you what's important and what's not important in life.
Yeah.
And that was a driving factor for me to try to set goals, try to achieve those goals, work hard. And I really was never afraid of failing because I didn't have anywhere to go but up.
Yeah.
I
I think that when you're young, especially, and I might do a video on this, like what I would do if I was starting over as a young person versus what I would do if I had to start over as a 50-something. They're vastly different, right? Because if you're starting out as a business person at 14 or 18, what's the difference between going to work for someone or going to work for yourself? You're going to struggle either way. In one way, you get to have a Corvette at 24 and be a millionaire at 30 and a multimillionaire as time goes on. In another way, maybe you gain a skill set and you go from minimum wage to just over minimum wage, and it just seems like a much slower, harder process. So it's definitely, when I was starting out, for me, I was in a similar position. I didn't have much to lose. I had a family that needed to be fed. I fortunately had a wife that had a pretty good job, so we weren't not going to eat if my business failed. But I had that entrepreneurial itch at a young age too. Not as young as you though. Well, depending on how you look at the first job, I was always doing something as a kid, but I didn't have businesses until I was in my mid-20s. So
I was lucky there. Actually, it was my brother who pushed me into my first business.
yeah,
And I would not have done that without my brother.
that's the gem, right?
Yes, the gym that we owned. And I continued to work in the hardware store business because I did enjoy the business. I enjoyed the customers. I really enjoyed the interaction. And I liked the idea about being in business.
Yeah.
And even though I wasn't the business owner, I was closely connected to every aspect of the way
You're
the
talking
business
about
ran.
at the hardware store.
Correct. And I put the word out there to other franchisee owners that I would like to own a store myself someday.
You did that at 18 years old, 17, 18 years
19
old.
years old.
Told people that. I love that. So I tell people all the time, you can kind of speak things into existence and tell people who you are, who you want to be. That's a very powerful mindset to have. So I like that you did that.
Yeah, and at the time I didn't really have a plan for it. I just put it out there, not even really having, we did have our first business, but we needed to grow the business, so we put a lot of capital back into the business. I wasn't personally making a lot of money at 19 years old, but things seemed to be heading in the right direction. And then when I put that out there to the franchisees, it took till I was 26 years old. So there was quite a few years that passed there before I was able to buy my first hardware store. And I did that not on my own. I had friends, and we had support systems and SBA loan and things like that.
Or you
had
had
partners.
people that came alongside and invested in you as a young man. You also had a cell phone business.
We did. That one was interesting because we started a cell phone business back in the early 90s, right when cell phones started to become popular. And we kind of fell into that business because we had a friend of ours who had done all the legwork to start the business, start the franchise, but needed the capital. And I had a little bit of capital, which I put into the business. And unfortunately, the partner ended up being a bad partner, so we took the business. And we ended up running that business for about 8 years. And it was very good business back in the early 90s when cellular phones started to become popular. And they started to become affordable finally.
Right.
Rich people before that were the only ones who owned cellular phones.
And you had the business like in the front of the gym, right?
We
Like,
did.
You're running both businesses in the same spot.
Yeah, that's how my wife, she was then was just a friend of mine. She was running the business.
You house hacked the gym.
We did. We did.
Or you business hacked the gym. You're like, we got
did.
one business, let's have another business and double the profits. So then tell us, how did you become the hardware store owner? Did you end up buying the one that you were working at all those years?
No,
or?
actually, I ended up buying one that was a couple towns over.
Okay.
And I ended up running that one for 10 years and opened up a second one in another town over.
Yeah.
And we ran that business up until about 10 years ago.
Yeah. You opened a third one in in Florida as well,
Right.
right before you sold them all, I guess.
Correct.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
And then we met at some point during the time that you had the 2 hardware stores up north. That's an interesting story how we met, guys. We both invested into a startup and lost all of our money. We both really invested a lot of time, effort, and money in it. But what came out of that was a great partnership. So even though we both probably lost a couple $100,000, we feel like that was what was worth it, right? Like, so sometimes you don't know what you're getting yourself into or what is going to come of it. In this case, Dave's the best business partner I've ever had, and I've had a lot. And we encourage people to partner with us on different things, but Dave and I actually are tied at the hip type partners where everything we do here on the island of Puerto Rico, we do together. We split it 50-50. So you guys see me every week and you don't see him. And what you probably don't know is if you partner with me, you're actually getting the benefit of partnering with Dave. And as soon as you partner with me, you realize that that's probably the far better part of the deal. So Dave takes care of all of the back end stuff that needs to be taken care of. He dots all the I's, crosses all the T's, and somewhat holds the reins on Robbie Krager, the Flip Flop Flipper, so that I don't just go crazy and get us involved in too much craziness across the island. So,
Well, and I appreciate that, but it's a great partnership, like you said.
yeah, we have a really good
complement each
partnership.
other. You do things that I don't do, and I do things that you don't do, and that's what makes the good partnership and the good relationship. You know, the story how we met was we had a mutual friend, and he had introduced us about 2008, 2009, and I knew that Robert was in the real estate business, and I had one house that I'd flipped in my hometown, and I really got the bug for being a real estate investor. So I met with Robert probably a few times before we decided to potentially go in business, and I was an investor of his at the time, and it was interesting because
I know where we're going.
he says, I said, well, what do we do? How do we get in business together? He said, well, it was by luck that there was a bank that was in Florida that was also a bank in my hometown. So he said, go home, put some money in the bank, and obviously there was a lot of trust there. I put $125,000 in the bank on Friday. He calls me. He says, I'm going to go to the auction on Monday, and we're going to buy some houses. And I said, okay, that's great. He calls me on Monday afternoon, and he said, we bought some houses. Great. How much did you spend? I spent it all. And I won't lie, I was taken back a little bit. It was the first time anything like that ever happened to me. All the money was invested, but that's how we started.
That's how
we started.
And it was fast.
Yeah,
and I used
it was
to tell
very
people
fast.
at the time that would be in that situation, like, okay, you're saying you've got some money and we're going to buy a house. And my thing back then was, I'm a sure thing. Like, we're not going to maybe buy a house. We're not going to look for a house for 6 months. We're going to buy a house. And I'm talking about we're going to buy it tomorrow or this week, definitely this month though. So expect for me to call to get the money. And a lot of times that would happen. I would not have the money in the bank. I would buy the house and then I would call the person. They'd be like, well, I need to move the money. I need a few days. And I would be like, no, that's not how this works. And then I'd have to call someone else. So I appreciate the trust. And I think it worked out pretty well because we
now we've been
obviously turned that into, how many houses have we done
together.
now?
I think we've done about 600.
Yeah,
About,
that's pretty
about
crazy.
600. Yeah, it's been crazy.
That's been pretty crazy.
I think I've made him a little more conservative, and he's made me a little bit less fiscally conservative.
Yeah.
But it's a great partnership. We've done a lot together, and we believe we're going to continue to do real estate together probably till we both die.
Yeah.
I believe that to be true, and our families are family to each other. His sons are like my sons, and his daughter's like my daughter, and
Yeah,
it's been a great
They call
partnership.
you and ask you for advice.
They call me
At
uncle.
least I know
yeah.
McKenna does.
He does all the time.
Yeah.
Yeah, he does.
I know McKenna does.
And I've invested in some of McKenna's properties
Yeah.
in the past when he did stuff up in the Panhandle.
My sister too.
Yeah, and your sister. Yeah, yes.
Dave is a good partner. Dave is a unicorn partner. So when you're looking for partners, you want to look for that partner that, they say that completes you. You complete me, Dave.
Yeah.
Right? Because he's got a skill set that I don't have. I've got a skill set that he doesn't have. And
Absolutely.
because we have different skill sets, we're able to go much faster and do a lot more than we would apart, right? Like, so even as fast as I would move, if I don't have somebody who can take care of the back end, at some point, I've got to take care of the back end, and then it slows everything down. And Dave would go much slower with buying things if I wasn't out there pushing the envelope a little bit.
That is true. Well, the other thing, if you're going to find a partner, you want to be very compatible, just like you would, dare I say, with a spouse. You've got to be compatible. And I think our personalities are extremely compatible. We're fairly easygoing, and we don't have any type of egos that we let those prey upon us, where we can't discuss things amongst each other and end up doing the right thing.
Yeah.
We
set goals together. I mean, we strategize together every year. We look at what worked last year and let's do more of that. What didn't work, let's do less of that. What's the stuff that's not making us much money? We'll sell that. What's the stuff or the kind of investments that are making us a lot of money? Let's do more of those. So these are the kind of things that you can learn from each other. And this is the way that a partnership's supposed to work, where 1 + 1, in our case, might equal 25, right? Like a good partnership's 1 + 1 = 3. With Dave and I, it's catapulted, I think, both of our net worth, our amount of money that we expect or want to earn. I can remember conversations when we first started out about what we sort of expected from each other and what we were going to do together. And we did a multiple of that, probably a multiple of 10 of that, maybe. It's a lot more.
It's been amazing. It has been.
It's been a lot more than what we may have set out to do.
But I'm glad you brought up goals too, because I think that's important.
Yeah.
We do work on goals every year, but that's important early on too, because I set a lot of goals that I truly wasn't sure and didn't have a plan that I was ever going to attain. But goal setting for me is important. You know me, I'm a planner. I like to have a lot more information before I make decisions. But setting those goals at least is very important. And sometimes you say speaking things into existence has happened before.
Well, I think it happened for you when you were 18 or 19 years old and started telling people you wanted to own that first business.
Yeah.
It was Ace Hardware? Or
it was Ace
you
Hardware.
didn't care at the time. You would have just done any
True
brand, right? But it turned out to be Ace or True Value.
It was Ace. No, I actually worked at a True Value, and they were a little upset because
True Value?
They're the ones that brought me the store, and it was an Ace, and wanted me to change it to a True Value, and I wouldn't. So that upset them. But the best business decision at the time was to keep it the type of store that it was, and it was good. It was good to me. We had it 21 years, had a lot of employees, had a lot of family members work for me for the entire time, and it was a blessing. It really was.
Yeah.
But when it got to the point where we had purchased enough rental properties in Florida that I didn't have to work anymore, that was when the light bulb went off and said, why am I still here?
Yeah.
So then at that point in time, I was able to sell the stores and retire the first time at 48 years old, moving to Florida, because we had enough rental properties that I didn't need any other income.
Yeah. I remember that too, because he moved to Florida and says he's retired. And I think maybe it was 6 weeks. It could have been 6 months, but it was really not very much time before he started showing up at the office and saying, Robbie, what do you got for me to do? I've walked around Celebration, Florida every day for the last however long it is, and I've seen all the deer and alligators and stuff. And you were ready to get back to work.
Yeah, when you're a serial entrepreneur, you can't sit around.
It's hard.
And I did it, and I've been in business for myself since 1989. It's just tough to do nothing.
Yeah.
And for me, it was, nothing was challenging at the time. And for me, I have to challenge myself and push myself. And to me, that's important, to know that you're making a difference or creating something, or, and helping others. What we do a lot is help others. We want to mentor and help people hopefully be successful, and it feels good when you can help people.
Sure. So Dave, I want to go back to what we started to talk about this earlier in the conversation. And I said that many people that watch our channel, they're searching for something, right? That maybe they're young and they're starting out and they want to become an entrepreneur or get out of what we call the rat race. Or maybe they're older and they want to think about retirement and building cash flow, but the mindset tells them for some reason that they can't, right? Often with the younger people, it's that I don't have the money. A lot of times with the older people, there's just fear, right? They've never done it. I actually think it may be harder for the 50-something to become an entrepreneur than for the 20-something. But what would you tell that person who's watching this about that mindset and how to get past? Because certainly you came from a place where you didn't have a lot to start. You had every excuse to say, I lost my parents and I'll never be able to be a business owner, but that wasn't the path that you chose. So what would your advice be for people watching?
Well, for me, it was a little different because mine was I had to survive. So it was work hard or fail and suffer the consequences. However, anybody can do it. We grew up with no parents, on welfare, not living on the streets, but close several times. But we never gave up. We just kept working hard, whatever that meant for you, whether it was me working hard in a hardware store, just trying to impress my bosses so that I could try to excel every single day. I was pushing hard, trying not to be afraid to fall because first of all, I didn't have far to fall. I just wanted to do better and be more because I knew I could do that. And as I saw some progress over the years, it got to be, you get more confident, and I was able to, part of it, like I said before, was setting the goals. When you set a goal, you really have to work toward that goal every day, regardless of the resources. I had zero resources. I remember making $2.35 an hour at the hardware store.
My goodness.
Now that was years ago. I get it, but it still was a very low wage even back then. But it didn't hold me back. All you have to do is continue to work hard. Don't take no for an answer. Keep moving forward. As Robert said, find good partners, lean on some of your friends and family, and get some confidence in what you're doing, and you'd be surprised what you can accomplish.
What do you think gave you that confidence to be able to persevere and have that mindset of an entrepreneur? For me, I always sort of had this idea that if someone else one time ever had done it, that I figured if I was reasonably smart enough that I'd be able to figure it out and do it myself. I didn't have the kind of hardship you have. I didn't grow up rich, but I didn't worry that the lights were going to come on. And I wasn't ever worried that we were not going to have a home, but you were having to pay the bills and stuff. But how did you have that kind of internal fortitude and that mindset? What gave you that?
What actually did that was I didn't want to be poor.
Yeah.
Financially, I saw other people, and I wanted to have more for myself and my potential future family. But actually, from watching my boss, the way he ran his life, I could see he did very well. And he bought back then a $125,000 big speedboat. He had a big house that he lived in. He always had the brand new, most expensive trucks that he had. I wasn't impressed with the material goods, but I could see that there was a positive thing to being your own boss and being successful.
Yeah.
And that's what I think drove me into, kind of solidified, hey, if you get your own businesses and you become your own boss, you can fail, but you also can succeed.
Mm-hmm.
And along with suffering the consequences of failure, you definitely get to reap the benefits and the rewards if you're successful.
Yeah.
And I saw that early on just from observing.
Yeah.
My dad always taught me to, you have 2 eyes, 2 ears, and 1 mouth. It should tell you something. You should listen and watch and speak less.
Mm-hmm.
And to me, that's how I've always lived and learned from observing.
Yeah.
And that really helped me succeed and see what other people are doing, whether that was positive or negative, and learn from those. And that helped me drive to some level of success anyway.
We came at things, if it's a circle, we might have done it exactly the opposite. You're thinking this way and I'm thinking this way, and eventually we're here and we're here. And it's about mindset, it's about goals. Give the audience here some practical steps on how to put things into action from your perspective, because I think you did it probably very differently than I did it. I jumped in with both feet, kind of not having any idea what I was going to do. You'd planned, and you actually were a lot, well, I've known you for a long time now. I know you were a lot more methodical than I was. You probably had a much greater chance of success as well than I ever did.
Well, for part of it for me to take the action steps, part of it is being financially, fiscally conservative. And because let's be realistic. In order for you to be a real estate investor, you at least have to have a little bit of money. You don't have to have a lot, but you have to have a little bit of money. And what I did was try to not live my life to have it outpace my income. So what I did was I never bought the brand new cars. I never bought the big house. I always set the money aside for investing and to take the action steps that it took to get to those goals. Some of it was partnership relationships, like Robert said. I've had friends and family along the way that helped me, and that was an important part of it as well. I didn't have any schooling. I didn't have any college. I barely graduated high school. I never went. So it wasn't education that helped me. It was taking action steps of being very fiscally conservative, trying to set those goals and try to put the action steps into place, which was saving money, plan what I was going to do with that money, and try to maximize the return on that investment. That's what I think in a nutshell is how I got there.
Yeah, I would also say you have the work ethic of a robot. So you don't mind at all working from morning till night, 5, 6, 7 days a week.
Yeah, that was one thing we always said. I probably worked 100 hours a week for 10 years before I even thought of taking a vacation.
Yeah.
I even put off my marriage forever because I didn't want to feel like I was a failure going into a marriage. I wanted to be financially successful.
Yeah.
So, for me, that was a big part of it.
Yeah. And it's proven to be true even as an entrepreneur as we've gone on. We work 12-hour days, 6 days a week, even now that we've got a pretty good level of success, right? Like that work ethic is super important. And so I know that everybody wants to get rich quick. And we say in real estate, you can get rich overnight. It just takes, 10 years of 12-hour days, 6 days a week. It's really not that hard.
Yeah, it's definitely a lot of work. People say a lot of times to me, why don't you retire? Why are you working so much? It's because we enjoy what we do.
Yeah.
And you could say that about every person who's met a certain level of success. Just because they can retire, they don't. That we love what we do. We do it because we want to, not because we have to.
Yeah.
And along with doing that, we're able to help people along the way.
I'm sure that if I didn't like what I was doing, I'd have retired 15 years ago.
Right. Right.
Certainly we were able to, but I love what I do too. I think I love it more now than I did even 10 or 15 years ago. I spring out of bed in the morning and I'm ready to go long days every day. Nobody could pay an entrepreneur to go and have a job and get the entrepreneur to work as hard as they do. I certainly know that about myself. Like when I think about it, having to at times going and getting a job, and it just feels icky that someone would want to pay me by the hour for my time. There's no chance I would put in the time and the effort if I was working for the man. It would have to be some obscene amount of money for me to even do what I do for other people. Like
us being entrepreneurs, we're just wired differently.
Yeah.
When I have family members who say how scary it must be to be in business for yourself. Who's going to pay your salary?
Yeah.
Who's going to pay your insurance? Guess what? I'm going to.
Yeah.
I can't be fired tomorrow. Now I could lose everything I own. Well, I don't think so because we did prudent planning. However, I can't be fired tomorrow.
Yeah. I can remember at like 10, 11 years old, watching my father turn down going into business with my uncle, and just at that young age thinking, Dad, go into business with Uncle John. That was the path I would have chosen as a young boy. And I think it is that what you said, we're wired differently. My dad was not wired to be an entrepreneur. He found safety in working for a big corporation, and he did fine. He did okay with that until the end. He got hurt, and then they cast him out. So that kind of drove that nail home for me at an older age. But at a young age, I was wired differently. I knew that I wasn't finding my security in somebody else turning the lights on and me showing up and doing whatever it is they wanted me to do. I like to be able to look myself in the mirror and go, you didn't get it done. You're to blame. It's your fault. Now go get it done. Or, wow, good job. You did it. You know.
And I understand some people's fear, but you just won't have a fulfilling life, in my opinion. There's always exceptions to the rule.
Sure.
However, most people aren't going to have the same life experiences or the same pride in what they do being an entrepreneur. And I understand how people get afraid to do it because of what I said. Who's going to pay my salary and who's going to pay my health insurance? But I've been doing it so long, it's just a thing that we do.
Yeah.
It's never really been a question as where's my next paycheck coming from. I know where it's coming from because I'm making it happen.
Or you know that you need to go out and make it happen
Or I need
because
to
you
make
don't
it
have anything
happen.
coming in.
Correct.
Yeah.
Correct. And we've seen over the years with people that we've either mentored or tried to give advice to because they've asked. And some people I've seen follow it, and some people I've seen not follow it. And some people that I've seen try to embrace the entrepreneurial spirit with making goals and trying to not be quite as afraid as what most people are, have done pretty well. Got some friends that I've helped out that have been very successful in real estate investing or primarily investing in general, not necessarily real estate because they don't really invest the money. I invest their money for them, and it happens to be in real estate, but because they've embraced that entrepreneurial spirit and not being so afraid of taking a chance, they've reaped the rewards and benefits of it.
Yeah, that's for sure. And conversely, like, I think of it like this: a pretty good job is a crippler. And what I mean by that is if you've got a pretty decent job that you don't hate enough to quit, but you're not really in love with it and it's not really giving you the life that you've got, that puts you in this box that keeps you stuck, right? So I don't know what you do if you're watching this and you got that pretty good job that you hate, but you're just not quite able to get out of the box. I'd rip the Band-Aid off and go become an entrepreneur, but I get why that would be a difficult thing to give up.
Yeah, and I don't think we're telling anybody to run out tomorrow and quit their jobs, but
Yeah.
we're just telling people.
I do sometimes say that, but
Well,
I'd say it with a plan too, right? Yeah.
Again, I'm a little more conservative.
Yeah, that's true.
I would always make sure I have a plan before I quit my job.
Yeah.
But people can do it, and if they did do it, or at least work toward that, they would be surprised where they can get to.
Yeah, that's
You
right.
know, it's amazing what you can accomplish if you really set goals and try hard enough to get there. You'd be surprised how you get there, and sometimes you look back and think, "How did I get there?"
Yeah.
You know, it's just that's how sometimes it's been in the past as well. But surround yourself with good people. Try to make good decisions. Don't overspend, and don't try to live like the Joneses and think you've got to have the best, latest, and greatest. Now, maybe not everybody thinks that way, but that's how I've lived my life.
Right.
You know, my salary and my net worth and my assets have increased dramatically over the years, but my lifestyle really has not.
Yeah, you're pretty good about that.
I still live the lifestyle I want. It just happens to be one that isn't very expensive.
We went the other way. I went the other way. I just did the lifestyle before I ever had
That's
anything
true.
and faked it until you maked it,
Yeah.
which is bullshit, by the way. That doesn't really work, but that was how we tried to do it.
Yeah.
And now I've backed off of that. Like, so when I didn't have any money, I had front row seats at the Magic game. When I didn't have any money, I bought a brand new Hummer off the showroom floor. Now that I've got money, I drive a 10-year-old Ford, and we don't have the season tickets to the Magic game and stuff. And I don't have a boat anymore. So, and you taught me that. And we've had many discussions about that, getting to the point where you live below your means. Because I always thought, I'll just make more money. And you taught me, hey, you could just live a little bit less and you'll have plenty of money. It's a good partnership, and I appreciate you coming in and sitting down. I know we got to get you to the airport, so I won't keep you any longer, but thanks, buddy.
Hey, thank you.
Appreciate-
I appreciate you guys having me on, and you go out there and you can make it happen.
Yes, sir. We'll see you on the next one.
All right. Thanks, guys.